Hi everyone, welcome to Pro Wrestling Defined Episode 2. I'm Jonathan O'Dwyer and I want to thank everybody that tuned into Episode 1. My interview with the Patriot Del Wilkes, the feedback on that was fantastic, so I want to thank everybody for that. And I'm really excited again about the guest that I have on the show today. He's got such an interesting story and perspective on the business. He had a great run back in the 80s and early 90s, probably the biggest name enhancement talent. Especially from WCW. He worked with all of the top stars there, had a very consistent run. He's worked with the likes of Sting, Lex Luger, the Road Warriors, Midnight Express, Abdullah The Butcher. He's got a really interesting story about Abdullah The Butcher that I loved, actually, and I think you'll really enjoy that. He worked in WWF as well. He had a little stint there. He worked with a lot of the top stars there too. Ted DiBiase, Rick Rude, Ultimate Warrior. He's just got a really interesting perspective on the business and some really great stories that I think you'll really appreciate, and just an overall great guy. And if you want some signed merchandise from him, you can contact him directly on Facebook at Randy Mule on Facebook. He's got a lot of good stuff, 8x10s, signed boots, lots of good stuff. So you can contact him directly if you're interested in any of that. So without further ado, my interview today is with the one and only Randy Hogan. Hi everyone, welcome to Pro Wrestling Defined Episode 2. I have a really great guest on the episode today. I'm really excited to have him on. He's a legend from NWA, WCW, WWF as Scott Colton. Randy Hogan in WCW. He wrestled all the top stars, Sting, Nikita Koloff, Vader, Rick Rude, Ultimate Warrior, Ted DiBiase in WWF. All the top stars. He had a legendary run, and it's an absolute honor to have you on today. Randy Hogan, how are you doing today, sir?
Jonathan, thank you, man. As brother, it's wonderful to be on here. Can't believe this technology, man. You're all the way over there, and I'm all the way over here, and everything's closed down in the world, but yet here we are, man.
Exactly, it's bringing us closer together, and it's a good thing we have it this year. Like you said, it's been a tough one, but yeah, it's the one thing that's kind of keeping everybody sane, I think, really, isn't it?
But it's getting old. It's time to get some real face-to-face going, you know?
100%, 100%.
I know you guys didn't you go through a recent lockdown over there now, or are you locked down?
Yeah, we're still in lockdown. I think we've about another 2 weeks left of it. So yeah,
we're wide open, but everything's creeping up. So I've got a feeling pretty soon they're going to start closing us up too again down here in Florida.
Oof, gosh, and especially with who's after coming into the White House now as well. You know, so it'll be interesting to see how that plays out now in January.
I know.
And you were actually one of the few states that actually got your voting right, it seems, in Florida.
Yes, for the first time. Last time we didn't. And we were one of the key states also. So, and I don't understand the whole thing. You know, it is what it is. And exactly. No matter who gets in as president, they only have so much power. You know, they got the Congress and the House of Representatives. They've got everybody else has to eventually make the decisions, you know. So
exactly,
he's at the pinnacle. He's at the top of the pyramid right now, but still, he's got to have his team, you know.
Exactly. Well, getting into the wrestling.
Wrestling, yes,
that's it. You were a big fan as a kid as well. I understand your grandparents were big fans. They were instrumental.
Oh, you did your homework, Jonathan.
Oh, I did my homework. Man. I did my research.
7 years old. I was a fan, and I'm as big a fan now as I was back then. It's funny because my mother and father were not fans at all. They just wrestling, that fake crap, you know. My grandparents, man, they were there on every word, you know. So
yeah.
So when they had it in Detroit, some of course, the old guys, Dick the Bruiser and the original Sheik and Bobo Brazil and Killer Kowalski and those guys. They'd take me to the shows, and I just got hooked. And we watch it on TV in the afternoons, and just had a really good childhood as far as the wrestling upbringing went. So I went through all the different eras, you know, from that one right up to. I'm still a fan to this very day. So.
Just on that note, who are some of the guys that you think are pretty good now these days? Is there any talent that
Well,
sticks out?
first of all, you got to figure I'm old school.
Yeah.
Okay, so all the monkey flips and all this high stuff and that doesn't impress me at all.
Oh, I don't like
Okay?
it either. I'm definitely the same. I like the old
But
school
there's
stuff.
a lot of talent out there. But isn't that funny now? They're pushing all this new style wrestling, but who are they bringing as the stars? Jericho, Goldust, Cody Rhodes. They had a friend of mine, Mike Jackson, was on AEW about a month ago. He just turned 70 years old.
Yeah.
He was big doing jobs back in the old NWA WCW days, also with me.
Mm-hmm.
But they're bringing all the old guys, all the nostalgia is coming back. So I have always been a big fan of Ziggler. I don't know why. Dolph Ziggler, he's good on a mic. He does whatever they tell him to do, whatever gimmick they want him to push to the best of his ability. Now, he's making good money to do it. But he's really a team player. So he's been one of my favorites out there for a while. The Miz, I think they're turning into a bit of a clown. I have no tolerance or use for Orange Cassidy.
Yeah, I'm not into it either.
I don't understand the hands in the pocket thing whatsoever.
No.
And I think back to the old days, like take a Wahoo McDaniel. He'd kill a guy like that. Because it's actually, they're mocking the business that is so important to us, so much of our lives. And so they're good. I like, finally, the last couple of years, what they're starting to do with the women's division. It went when you had the old Fabulous Moolah and Joyce Grable and all the tough women back in the day, and then it went strictly to the eye candy. Good to look at, but they couldn't. Like they say, they couldn't tell a wrist lock from a wrist watch. And so now they've kind of blended the two. I'm a fan, which a lot of people are not, of Nia Jax.
Yeah.
I think she's big. She's strong. I'm not sure they're using her in the right way. Hopefully they will. She's got a lot of heat on her because she's hurt a lot of people. Well, she's big. She's strong. She's kind of old school. Like they used to tell us. If you can't take a punch, if you can't take a slap, then you shouldn't be in the business.
You have to make it look good, don't you?
Well, nowadays it's a lot more gymnastics than that. First of all, there's no finishing maneuvers anymore because everybody kicks out of everybody's finish from the Undertaker right on down. It's kind of sad. Before, when somebody would grab a sleeper hold or something, that's the finish. That's the end. It's different now. Now you put a guy through a table and he still kicks out at 2. They'll go through the same finish 2 or 3 or 4 different times. The guy can barely stand up. Then all of a sudden he's picking it up over his head and dropping a knee on his face and breaking his nose. And it's just, I think a lot of it has to do with selling. You have to tell the story. And there's no story. Again, I know I sound like one of the old men again, one of the old guys, but that's one of the biggest complaints we have is the lack of storytelling. If you think of not only the real old guys, even like Ric Flair, he would be working on a guy's leg or knee for a long time, as did Greg the Hammer Valentine. They'd work on that knee, work on that knee, work on that knee. Eventually, they'd put him in the figure 4, and it was over.
Yeah.
You don't see that. You don't see a lot of mat wrestling. We were watching it the other night, and just tried to count the actual wrestling moves. There was none. There's lots of punches. There's lots of kicks. Everybody's doing a super kick. Everybody's and then you got like Jeff Hardy. I mean, how many times is he going to hit that twist of fate, or miss it? I should say miss it. 9 out of 10 times he goes for it. Should be his finisher, and it's gone.
Yeah.
So, but as far as a new product, I like Charlotte Flair. I think she carries that aura about her.
Definitely.
Very well. The Queen. Definitely a heel. Just like her daddy.
Yeah, for
You know,
sure.
she's good on the mic. She carries it. She's got that don't give a crap attitude. She's tough as nails. So she'll be back supposedly before the end of the year. She had some cosmetic surgery problems. So, yeah. So she's supposed to be back before the end of the year, and probably will make a big comeback and go back. I'm not really a fan of Asuka. She has a lot of hollering and screaming in Japanese or something. I'm not sure what, but it's hard to follow her. You know.
Yeah, that definitely gets old.
Yeah, she along with in Japan, of course, she's very big and doing just like Kenny Omega. You know, he's huge over there. He comes over here, and man, I don't see it.
Yeah, neither do I.
Cody Rhodes, was always a good, solid mid-card wrestler or upper mid-card. But he's no world champion thing, If he didn't get hooked up with Tony Khan. And what about these young bucks? What are they, 160 pounds apiece, Put them against Demolition or the Road Warriors or somebody like that, or the old Bruiser and the Crusher,
Yeah.
You'd kill them. So that's kind of how I look at the product. So it's hard to pick out favorites right now, other than ones I picked out. I like Roman Reigns.
Yeah, he's excellent.
I think he's going to start this little Samoan dynasty going, which will take over where the Shield was and other things. I don't know how it's going to play out at the end, but I think he's a real talent. And those are pretty much the standouts. The Undertaker's got one more last ride coming up, I guess. I don't know. He's had so many last rides. He must be out of gas by now. But I like him. But he's one of the last gimmicks that really held true. I hope they don't screw up Bray Wyatt, the Fiend. I think that's got potential. You want me to come out with a swinging lantern and everything? That was really cool. Now he's got Alexa Bliss and he's got his little cartoon firehouse or whatever it's called, Firefly Firehouse. But again, the guy can work. He can really, really wrestle. A good pedigree there. The family in that. So I hope they don't bury him. They've got a history of burying really good people, and now a lot of them, like Luke Harper and them, are going to AEW. Heath Slater was another one. Heath Slater, he could wrestle. He did whatever they told him, whatever crazy, goofy gimmick they gave him. He did what he was told, and they still fired him. So.
Yeah.
I don't understand the reasoning for it. Back in the old days, you did your job and you got to a point, and if you sold tickets, people wanted to see you, you worked. You kept your mouth shut. You didn't complain. Out of courtesy, you always thanked the guy after the match, and you went about your business. Now, a guy gets a bruise. He's out for 3 months, making $3 million a year. It's just a whole different ball game. So it's fun for us old guys to see really where it's going to develop in the next 5 or 10 years, like it has been, over the past 10 or so. Definitely. But that's my take on the current product and the old product. Give me the storylines. I don't care about all this crap. Hit me in the head with a chair or 2x4. It don't matter. I don't care. That's what you get paid for. Now you can't hit a guy in the head because of concussions. So now you got to hit him across the back. Well, I could slap my wife across the back and she'd get up and hit me. It wouldn't make no difference,
Yeah.
Slap somebody, she hit me, she hurt me. But slap somebody in the head with a chair like they used to in the old days in there. And people believed that, and it was real.
Oh, yeah.
I again, just a little story. I wrestled Abdullah the Butcher, okay? Abdullah, it was a big, 400 pounds.
Oh, yeah.
On screen, crazy. Wild man from the Sudan. Okay? So I was wrestling him, and Gary Hart was managing him, and he came across. I didn't know he was going to do this either. Again, nothing choreographed, nothing talked about. Who's going to win, who's going to lose, and how much TV time you got. That's all we knew. Everything was called in the ring. Nothing was practiced or talked about ahead of time. So I'm in there. I turn around, I'm taking my jacket off. Next thing I know, he's coming across. He had, I don't know, North American title or something with a belt. It smacks me in the back of the head with it. Now, not with the strap piece, with the metal, you know, boom, damn, that hurts.
Yeah.
So we went about the match, and of course, he just beating my brains out, threw me out of the ring. Gary Hart took a shot at me. Abdullah come out, threw me back in the ring, stood on my neck and my chest, 400 pounds. Usually now they would take a little pressure off by putting their hand on the ring, on the ropes or something. Not him, man, full bore. Threw me out of the ring again and picked up a kendo stick from under the ring. Beat me like a dog with that kendo stick across my back. This is a 3-hour taping we were doing.
Yeah.
So after the match, go back in the locker room. And I said, thank you. Even though he hurt me bad. And he said, you okay? I said, yeah, sure. Thank you very much. And I said, you about beat me to death with that kendo stick. So he's sitting there with his feet up and smoking a cigar. And he said, son, it's good for the business. Now, that was the old school mentality.
Yeah.
When you're that far, when you're 3 or 4 or 5 feet from a fan, and you're going to hit somebody, you damn well better hit them. You can't be pulling punches or missing. And the thing is, if you miss, you're not going to sell it. The guy's not going to sell it. I'm not going to act like you hit me when I'm in front of a fan and she sees you missed me by 3 feet away. So, But that was the old mentality. Now, even on TV, the cameramen, which are kind of trained to not see certain things, you see things missed all the time. It's so I think right down to the camera work, things now are different than what they used to be. But anyway, so I go over there with Abdullah smoking a cigar in there. I said, beat me with a kendo stick. And he says, it's good for the business. Man, that stuck with me my whole life. It's good for the business. Don't bitch. Don't complain. Take a shot. That's what you get paid for. And the closer you are to the fans, the more real it better be. Tell a story, sell the moves. That's what it's all about. It's good for the business. And I never forgot that. And here's this big crazy guy that beat me to death. Him and Vader, those were the two stiffest, toughest, meanest people I ever wrestled against.
Yeah, I actually watched the Vader match leading up to this, and that looked pretty rough.
Well, there was a couple of it's funny because he does that. I don't know what he calls it. That monkey thing where he's standing on the second rope and then he comes back and just kind of.
The Vader bomb or Vader splash or something. One of those anyway. Vader bomb, I think. Yeah.
So, anyways, he did one. It was kind of stiff. It was okay, and then he did like 2 more. And they were all kind of stiff, but I was okay. Well, I guess on TV, it looked so real that Nick Patrick and a couple of the referees and that from the back come out to the ring to check on me. They thought legit I was out. So they helped me back into the locker room. I says, I'm fine, guys, but really, it was stiff and it hurt. I didn't tell anybody that. I said, "Oh yeah, I'm fine. It's cool." My ribs were sticking out my back and everything else. But Vader in the early days, he just didn't care. He actually broke a kid's back, with his Vader bomb at one time.
Yeah.
He definitely took liberties with kids and myself. I'm not complaining because that's part of the gig.
Yeah.
But he definitely took liberties, and he caught a lot of heat from it. And he'd come to words at one time, and that's one of the things I think that triggered confrontation with him and Paul Orndorff.
Yes.
And Orndorff had his flip-flops on in the locker room. He just beat the tar out of Vader. He did, yeah.
I've heard that before. They've always kind of gone back and forth on who won that fight, but most people kind of say Orndorff, I think, don't they?
Yeah. Now Orndorff now was, a shell of himself back then, but of course everybody was on the juice back then. Everybody was roided up, and ready to fight, and either on that or cocaine or whatever they were on or something, but they were all pretty tough guys. and they didn't take no crap. And
Yeah.
some of them, like Orndorff and a few of the other big names, actually respected us. Enhancement people, as they call us. Enhancement. I was a jobber. I was an enhancement. I was a star maker. Call me what you want. I'm not offended by any of it, okay? Like I said, a jobber, we all got a job, right? We all got a 9-to-5er. We go to work, we get paid, we do a job, and we come home. So don't that make everybody a jobber?
Exactly.
Huh?
And
My
plus, you
job.
did it so well that it ended up making you a star. So
No, not a star by any means, man. I am totally humble. You know, I can't believe somebody like you across the pond, as you say, even wants to talk to an old guy like me. So much less, I do all the conventions I can. I hope to get over the UK and get in one when things open up one day in the next year or so. But it's just some of the guys really get offended by being called a jobber. And I don't understand it, Enhancement, yeah, we got paid to enhance the other guys. Carpenters, we built the stars, okay? Star makers, we were star makers. So we've been called everything, from a jobber, whatever else. What your keyboard warriors don't all understand is we know how to wrestle.
Mm-hmm.
We're not just a piece of meat that gets beat up. Now on TV, that's our job,
Yeah.
I may drive a shuttle, but that don't mean I can't drive a big lift truck or something too. We just do what we're told. If we're in a match with somebody like a Ric Flair or even Brad Armstrong comes to mind, good technical wrestlers, you wrestle because you're showing off their wrestling abilities. Mm-hmm. If I'm in there with Vader or Abdullah, the Road Warriors, of course I'm a piece of meat because it's my job to make them look indestructible, big, larger than life, mean, strong,
Mm-hmm.
So you got to kind of know your role, and you've got to be able to swim in any pond, as they say. So, and some of us could do that, and some of the guys that you saw one or two times on TV maybe, and then they disappear, they couldn't. So, but it all comes with training.
Exactly. And so just going backwards, just talking about your actual start in the business. You were in the restaurant business, I think, before you started. And funnily enough,
yes,
you were in a band as well, which is kind of convenient.
Wow.
Seeing as
you want that whole story and how they're all intertwined?
Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead.
First, I was in a band. It was called Brandy, which was kind of like a Bonnie and Randy with Brandy. Mm-hmm. And we had a one-time up to 8 pieces show group. We played resorts and hotels and things like that. All up and down the East Coast and all over the States. And we were playing a Holiday Inn circuit in the South. It was in Columbus, Georgia. Now in Columbus, Georgia, they had wrestling every Wednesday night at the auditorium. Now, again, remember, I'm a big fan, okay? I'm like, 26, 27 years old. Big fan, knew all the guys. That magazine behind you, Pro Wrestling Illustrated, I read every one, Mm-hmm. They didn't have any internet back then, but I had subscriptions to the Wrestling Observer and all the dirt sheets, so I could see. So anyways, we're playing on Wednesday night, and who walks in but the Continental Lover, Eddie Mansfield, Wahoo McDaniels.
Wow.
Who else was with them? I forget. Some local guys. So here I am all excited. Kid in the candy shop, So I went up and said hi to them very humbly, and they were nice. Anyways, I found out that Eddie Mansfield lived in Columbus. So he would come in all the time and see us, and we were there every few months. That was one of our regular stops. And I got to know him, and he'd actually come over to the Holiday Inn so he could lay by the pool because I had a room there. So we'd go by the pool, and he'd work on his suntan, and we'd talk a little bit of wrestling, very little, just more about personal stuff. Got to know each other.
Yeah.
And so that was the music thing. Then I said, well, what am I going to be when I grow up? this point, I was like 28 years old. So I went to the food and beverage director at the Holiday Inn, and I said, I'd spent so much time in restaurants and bars in the band side of it. I says, how can I get in the restaurant business? He said, I could get you a job as a bar manager. And I said, no, I want to get out of the bar scene. I'd rather do something else. So anyways, that didn't work out. So I'm sitting in my room on a Sunday looking at the newspaper, and there was an ad for Pizza Inn, it was called, looking for manager trainees. I says, wow. I says, I got to do something. So I went on an interview and got hired. So I'm like, God, what do I do now? So we had a couple of contracts left over. I ended up in New Orleans and packed all my stuff up and moved to Columbus, Georgia. Went to work there for a couple of different restaurant chains. Church's Fried Chicken was the last one I worked for up there. And then my father had cancer, and he just had a little bit of time left. So they actually transferred me from Atlanta, Georgia, down to Florida, where my parents lived. Okay. So I came down there and I got a job managing a restaurant. And the restaurant was going to close. So I said, God, now what? I said, I always wanted to know if this wrestling was real or is it fake? Because I didn't know. I had no idea. And Eddie, the old kayfabe days, didn't talk anything inside. So I called Jerry Oates. Now, Ted and Jerry Oates were a tag team worldwide. Jerry owned a gym up there. And so I called him and said, do you know anybody down here that trains people? He said, the only one I know was Hiro Matsuda, who trained Lex Luger and Hulk Hogan and worked with Mike Graham and Steve Kern, a lot of guys down here. But, that was way out of my league. He said, but, I train guys up here. And I said, okay. So we talked back and forth. Anyways, packed everything up I had, moved back to Columbus. Started working out at the gym, again, with Eddie Mansfield, who was there all the time. And started my training with Jerry. Now, Jerry had an aerobics room in the back that just had a mat on it. There was no ring, no nothing, just a mat. So I learned how to take bumps, how to fall, how to mat wrestle on a mat. Now, when you're falling on maybe a 2-inch mat on a cement floor, you darn well better learn how to fall correctly. And I did. So, years later, when I finally got falling in a ring, it was like a waterbed, because I'm used to falling on, covered cement. So I was into that for a little bit with Jerry, and we were learning to do a leapfrog, just leapfrog. And I came down on my ankle really bad. And that took me out for 3 or 4 months. I just thought it was a sprain and just treated it myself. In the meantime, Ted Oates, Jerry's brother, opened up a real wrestling school just about a mile away, storefront, and he really had a ring in there. So I went and talked to Ted. I said, I'm ready to come back now. Can I, he said, well, sure, come on. So I literally had tears in my eyes the first time I stepped foot in a real wrestling ring. I couldn't believe it. I thought back to my grandparents. It was just such a sentimental moment. And they were old school training. Old school training was they beat us up pretty good the first couple of months to see if we had what it takes. If you get beat up and you come back, then they will. If you get hurt and you get beat up and you don't want to come back, or you don't go to your training or whatever else, they don't want nothing to do with you. So it's like an initiation, kind of a hazing.
Yeah.
So I went through that for about 13 months. Had one match, which was just all the students put on as a benefit for the police athletic league or something. And that was it. So I didn't wrestle. I got what I wanted. I thought I got what I wanted out of wrestling. Just that I had that one match. I knew the moves. I knew some of the inside stuff. I thought I knew it all. I didn't know crap. So I continued to work there. I was managing a restaurant while I was training. and went to the matches every Wednesday, and went and saw my friend Eddie Mansfield was wrestling there, Georgia Championship Wrestling, Gordon Soley, and all those guys.
Yeah.
Wahoo. And so I used to go in early just so I could see the wrestlers, not really talk to them much. And guy I trained with was putting up the ring. I said, Bill, what are you doing? He says, well, I own the ring. He said, and they rent it from me when they come into town. He says, what are you doing? And I said, well, I'm not doing nothing. What are you doing? He says, I'm wrestling this little bar up in North Georgia. He says, why don't you bring your stuff and, come with me sometime? I said, I'm not going to bring my stuff, but I'd love to come watch you. So I rode up with him a couple of times and just watched him, just a little bar, maybe 20 people sitting in the bar, a bunch of drunk soldiers fighting in the back in the corner or something else,
Yeah.
And so once he said, bring your stuff. I said, okay. So I brought my stuff once and somebody didn't show up. So, of course, I've always had the mustache since I was like 18 years old. And my hair was long at the time, and I was still in somewhat shape back then. And said, you want to wrestle? You want to work tonight? And I said, well, okay. I thought I knew it all. So the promoter says, okay, what's your name? I said, well, Randy Franklin. My dad's name was Frank. So I said, okay, Randy Franklin. He says, okay, you're going to wrestle this guy named the Animal. The Animal's going over. I says, okay. So I'll go back in the locker room to my friend Bill. I said, Bill, I'm wrestling Animal and he's going over. What does that mean? Does that mean he's going over the top rope or he's going to throw me over? What does going over mean? He says, no, dummy. Going over means he's going to win. Oh, okay. That's how green I was. So I was going through the match. It was a decent match. I got beat, of course. And the promoter says, son, can you come back next week? And I said, well, sure I can, whatever. He says, I'll pay you next week. He says, I'll give you $15. I said, good. Now I drove 3.5 hours up, 3.5 hours back, bought something to eat, filled my tank up with gas at the time for a $15 paycheck. But I went. So I went home that night, my girlfriend, I said, man, you gotta bleach my hair blonde. She said, the guy wants to call me Hal Hogan. So I got there and talked to him. And I said, I don't mind the Hogan thing, but let's not do Hal. I don't know who the hell they're talking about. How about Randy Hogan? So that's how Randy Hogan came about. Had nothing to do at the time on my part with Hulk Hogan. He said, well, you're a little bit like Hulk Hogan. Now, this is back around 70, I don't know, 70s. Hogan wasn't even up in New York yet,
Yeah.
But he was getting a name for himself in the AWA, and he was about to come up there with Blassie. So we're going to call, you're going to be his cousin. I said, okay. He said, no, maybe his nephew. And I said, yes, sir. Well, this guy had a third grade education as promoter in this little bar. So I went up now on Randy Hogan. Now I had the long hair, and it was blonde. Bleached my mustache blonde. Bleached my eyebrows blonde. Now this is all natural now. It's all natural, gray stuff, no more color to it. So I went in, and now we had a Broadway, which was a draw, a time limit draw, as they call it.
Yeah.
And so I went back a couple more times, and you're wrestling on a card with a bunch of different guys, and they were all just starting out. There were no big names at the time. And said, well, where are you working next week? Oh, I'm working in this town. So we would go watch them just to support them, whatever. Common courtesy, professional courtesy was if you go to watch somebody, they introduce you to the promoter. I say, hello, I'm Randy Hogan. If you can ever use me, let me know. And because of the Hogan look, Hulk Hogan never mentioned. Nothing mentioned. Let me get that clear right now, brother. No reference whatsoever, but they wanted to play on that. So I said, whatever they want. Pin me, pay me. That's kind of the attitude. So I go see guys, and that's how I don't know how it works on the indies now, but back then, of course, there were no indies. It was outlaw wrestling, which is now developed into indie shows.
Yeah.
And you wrestle, and you get a look, and you work, and because I was trained, not just one of the backyard brawlers, I was really trained to wrestle. I moved up a little bit, and stuff. And then as Hulk Hogan got big and Hulkamania was born in that, then I was just kind of on the coattails, never mentioning him or nothing. But the promoters, oh yeah, here, he's his brother. It's his cousin, his nephew, whatever. And, I'll be whatever you want me to be. That's the show business part.
Exactly.
Some of the worst heels are the nicest guys in real life, and that's the truth.
Yeah.
So I'm working on a show with the self-proclaimed junior heavyweight champion of Alabama, Action Mike Jackson. Now, Mike Jackson, about 6 weeks ago, was on AEW in a match. Did great. He's almost 70 years old. Still can go with the best of them. But Mike was one of the main jobbers up in NWA at the time in Atlanta. Him and George South. And I said, Mike, how do you get on TV? And he says, well, kind of the same story as the bar. He says, I can't guarantee you anything. He said, but bring your stuff. He said, you can ride up with me up to Atlanta every Wednesday. They do 2 or 3 hours taping at WTBS studios. And maybe I can get you on. So I went a couple, 3 times. Sure enough, they were short of a jobber once. J.J. Dillon was doing booking at the time. I went to Mike and says, Mike, you got a guy? Mike says, yeah. So you want to work? Well, I knew what work meant. I said, yeah, absolutely. So here I am. You talk about a kid in a candy shop. I've got maybe 6 or 7 matches under my belt. And now I'm on TV with the big boys. So who are you wrestling? Well, my first TV match was against the Warlord and the Barbarian.
Yeah.
And what an experience that was. The Warlord was the biggest man I've ever seen. He's got to be 6'7" or that. He's still big. Okay. So anyways, I'm in there, and he gets me in a press over his head. Now, I got to be at least 8, 9 feet in the air and lets me drop. And I landed perfectly. Didn't feel a thing. I just wanted to jump up, say, yes, that was great. Of course, I couldn't, though. So he tags out, Barbarian comes in. Going to shoot me in the ropes. Shoots me back. Whenever there's an element of risk, you communicate with your partner, with your opponent. For instance, if somebody's going to throw you in the ropes, you say, drop kick, elbow, whatever, so the guy knows what's coming. So Barbarian throws me in. Now I think he's Tongan or Samoan, one of those. Very strong accent when he talks. So he goes, boo-boo. That was it. Now, I got a split second to think, okay, I got to hit the ropes. Boo-boo, I don't know what that means. So anyways, full adrenaline. First time on TV. I hit them ropes 100 miles an hour. I come running off, not knowing what to expect. Next thing, I got a size 15 right in my face. Breaks my nose. Blood going all over. Now, this is on TV. And anyways, what he was saying, big boot. Like, watch for the big boot. You know? He's a boot. So that was the first thing. But I guess they took pity on me, and JJ said, all right, Hogan, come back next week? Yes, sir. So that's how the WCW, the TV stuff really got started. Probably 6 months later or so of working this with Jim Crockett's NWA, Ted Turner bought it and turned it into WCW. He brought in guys like Jim Herd and some guy named Siegel and Bischoff. Anyways, they wanted to change things a little bit. They wanted guys that knew how to work, how to wrestle, not just the pieces of meat.
Yeah.
So it was almost like an audition type thing. A lot of those faces disappeared, but like me and George South, the Italian Stallion, Gary Royal, there was, 6 or 7 of us that they kept. So we got to wrestle all the guys all the time. And they get to know you. And again, like I said, old school mentality. You never complained about who you're working, about how stiff they were, about if you got hurt, whatever else. You go back, shake the hand, thank you very much for the match, and you go about your business. That was job security back then. So, and the fact that we were trained, and I was lucky because I learned how to fall pretty much like a cat. I don't care where I'm at, how you throw me, I could take it. Now I was smaller, well, not small, but I was about 225 to 230 at the time, pounds.
Yeah.
So guys could pick me up, Road Warriors, where they just pick me up and flow me around like a rag doll, you know. I didn't care. Go ahead, yeah, do it with a smile. So after a while, certain guys, they asked to work with you. Ric Flair used to love George South. Jimmy Cornette and the Midnight Express used to love me because I could do the wrestling part with them. I could job out to them, and they could do all their whatever they wanted to do, and it was fine. The Road Warriors were just starting, where they had Animal would have you on his shoulders, and then Hawk would come off the top rope with a lariat, and they'd flip you back, you know. Easy bump, but and I could do that. Sting the same way. A couple times I could do. He was teaming up at first. He was teaming up with Luger as a tag.
Yeah.
And they could do whatever they wanted with me. I didn't care, you know. And I worked steady and did that for a long time until I was in a match in Savannah, Georgia, TV, wrestling Rick Steiner. And I wrestled him a few times before. And one of his patented moves was a suplex, belly to back suplex. And I would land on my head, and that hurt. So we're doing it. So he went behind me, and I said, well, you know, I'm going to turn a little bit and try to get the brunt of the fall on the meat of my back of my shoulders rather than the back of my head. So he went back. I turned a little too much and cracked my clavicle, that little bone that goes across here.
Yeah.
So immediately, you know, you tell the referee when something happens, and I said, take it home, my shoulder. Well, he didn't tell Steiner that it was my shoulder. He just said, you know, take it home. So we went to the finish, which was a power slam. So now he shoots me in the ropes, which is hard enough. But then he picks me up and he power slams me down. I've never been shot, but it's got to feel like a bullet going through you. So that was pretty much the end of my full-time thing with wrestling. Moved back down to Florida. Said, okay, well, what am I going to do now after I was healed up? You know, walked around with one of those things on like this forever. So I bought a restaurant that was going to go under. And the local newspaper picked up, you know, Cedar River Seafood, just bought by professional wrestler Randy Hogan. So I said, oh, hell, here I go. So I had to keep the hair blonde and everything else, come back. Had a little 5x7 promo pictures made and became in town like a Ronald McDonald. Mom and Dad were asking the kids, hey, where do you want to go have dinner? Oh, let's go see Randy Hogan. Because I'd always sit at the table. I'd talk to him about this guy or that guy or what happened. I'd give him an autographed picture. You know, they thought it was great. It was good for business. So that kept Randy Hogan somewhat alive. But I said, well, now what? So at that point, WCW started doing their TV tapings in Orlando at MGM Studio, Disney World. So I made a couple of calls, and now whenever they came down and did TV, I was back on TV, doing the same thing I did before, but just strictly TV. That kept me relevant for my restaurant. You know, I do a thing on TV, I get paid, I come back. Oh, I saw you on TV last week. You know, everybody, they like, you got jobbed out, but they think you're a movie star, think you're special. I'm still humbled by it. I can't believe it. So that's how that went around, and that just kept on going. Then I ended up at one time with six restaurants. Sold the last one 10 years ago. Got married and moved to Orlando, which is where I'm at right now, about 30 minutes from Disney World, where it all happened. So, but those old days, like I said, I got Jimmy Cornette in the Midnight Express. Felt very close to, I guess, through the years. Sting was very cold and businesslike at first, but then after he got to know you, he warmed up. Luger always loved himself from the beginning until the end. That was just it. Luger loved Luger. the locker room, it's funny because when you first go up there, of course, you're all in the locker room together. And I mean, I'm sitting in the corner with some of the other jobbers, enhancement guys. And you're looking around, you got Dusty Rhodes over here, you had Ricky Steamboat over here, you had all these big names, heroes. You just want to go get everybody's autograph, you know? Because again, I'm still the biggest fan in the world.
Yeah.
So, but they're very standoffish. So after I worked Jimmy Cornette a couple of times, he was like my best buddy at the time. Kevin Sullivan was another one. He was like in the gorilla position, which was looking at the monitor and saying, Hogan, go to the ring, whatever else.
Yeah.
So he'd send me to the ring a few times and everything. And then one day I go and look at the sheet, and I'm wrestling against the Varsity Club, which at the time was him, Dr. Death Steve Williams, and
Mike Rotunda? Yeah.
Mike Rotunda, yeah. So the ones that I had was Rotunda and Sullivan. And Sullivan was he's safe, but he's stiff. You know?
Yeah.
Old school, just old school.
Snug.
So he calls her, he hung me, you know, upside down in the corner. Tree of woe, he used to call it. Comes running across the ring with his hip into you, you know.
Yeah.
And he did, and it was stiff, but it was fine, you know. But I took it and went back professional after the match, like we're supposed to. And just something clicked with Kevin. So now Kevin, instead of saying, Hogan, go to the ring, he says, Randy, you're up. Wow. Kevin Sullivan calling me Randy by my real first name, you know. It was just like a badge of honor for me.
Yeah.
So it's funny, I talked to Kevin last week.
Oh, really?
After 30 years, and just shared with him. Just thanked him for making me actually feel part of the group. Another, the big one was Terry Funk. Now, Terry Funk was always an all-time great. Still is.
Yeah.
But he would be the only one that walked across the room to all of us jobbers sitting in the corner like a bunch of scared little kids, shake your hand, look you right in the eye, and say, my name's Terry Funk. What's your name? He says, I am so glad to meet you. I mean, you talk about feeling humbled. Here's Terry Funk asking me what my name is, and he's glad to meet me. So those three are the standouts of all of them. You know, you mentioned the WWF stuff. I just did a few jobs with them when they come through town and that. So I was never a Barry Horowitz or a Reno Riggins, you know, type. In fact, we laugh about it now because Barry lives not even an hour from me here, and we talk through Facebook and on the phone once in a while. In fact, we do conventions together.
Yeah.
And there's a vendor that's trying to put him and I together. You know, the best of WWF versus the WCW. You know, they even tried to get us in the ring to have a match. Now Barry's about as busted up as I am. So, in fact, I'm healing right now. I had my ankle replaced a few months back.
Yeah.
Where they used to fuse them, but I had mine replaced. So, and I've had both knees replaced. Triple bypass. It hasn't changed my life at all, really. But I think my top rope days are over. So, but not the convention. So still, Barry and I is going to meet up, and you know, maybe in case they'll run in, or we'll manage somebody, you know, and help them with a screw finish, the good guy or something. But it's funny because after like, I don't know, 20 years or so of being not relevant at all, not being on TV, not wrestling, all of a sudden there's this need for nostalgia. Everybody's starting to get a little more into history. They're looking at some of the old guys. There's not a whole lot of old guys around anymore like me, you know. I'm going to be 70 years old this year. And there's just not a whole lot around to have the stories and still can remember and willing to do things like these conventions.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden I get a call. Would you like to do one of these at a convention? Well, I never did one before. What do I do? So you sit behind a table, you take pictures, you sell pictures, take pictures, interact with the fans. I says, okay. Now I'm thinking, well, what do I wear? Because I told you all my whole career, I only had one outfit. I had one pair of turquoise boots. I had one pair of turquoise trunks, which I bought a yellow pair, like Hulk Hogan's eventually. And I had a black velvet robe with a sequins that had a turquoise lining in it, Never picked up on the Hogan gimmick, but this vendor did. So he says, yeah, he says, do a Hogan gimmick. I said, what, the Hogan gimmick, whatever, yellow and red. So I had shirts made, the Hulkamania shirts. I had Randomania, which I've got.
Yeah.
And I still send. I had these made, which is Hogan's
Sweet.
World Order signature shirt to sell.
That's awesome.
Bandanas, the glasses, and everything else, This, I got I took my beautiful turquoise boots and had them dyed yellow, like Hogan's. I got the red and yellow tie-dyed spandex. So I wore that, yellow weightlifter's belt, with that. So now, all of a sudden, after all these years, a year ago at the big event in New York, now for the first time I'm doing the Hulk Hogan gimmick, the Hogan gimmick, And it went well. So that's what people wanted, even though they remembered Randy. The first day, I got matching glasses for every outfit. But I said, well, shouldn't I be in my turquoise or something, a combination? No, do the Hogan thing. So what I did is I put the glasses up on top, like Hogan wears them most of the time, Hulk does. Because that way it still looks a little bit like the Randy Hogan that they may remember or they see or the pictures in front of them.
Yeah.
And they still get the Hulk Hogan feel. Are you his brother? Are you his cousin? Let me have a picture with you. Yes, sir. $20. So that's how the whole Hulk Hogan thing is. Have I ever met Hulk Hogan? No. I have never had a face-to-face. Now, again,
you had a little interaction with him at his
man, you were going to go
thing
there.
in WCW, didn't you?
That. He's got his beach shop here, which is, he lives an hour from me also. A lot of guys live around here. So I'm working for a radio station. This is before I bought after I had my first restaurant. I was working for a radio station between buying my second one. And I had a little 3-minute thing on the wrestling, just reading off the dirt sheets, what's going to happen and what happened, and this inside stuff on the sports thing. So now all of a sudden, this Hulk Hogan guy is jumping to WCW, and he's going to be at a ticker tape parade in Orlando. So, of course, they know I'm a wrestler. Would you like to go? I said, well, hell yes, I'd like to go. So they got me a real press pass, and I was there I wasn't a plant. I was there as a real representative of my radio station, part of the press. And you saw, the clip where somebody, I guess, caught it on camera that, he really was there. Was he a plant? No, I wasn't a plant. I was there as a real reporter.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting, or standing actually, just right in front of the stage. Hogan, Jimmy Hart, guys. And Hogan, looks around, looks over there, and almost like a double take and a nod. Man, I was thrilled. It was like an acknowledgement. Now, I had been wrestling all this time. I'd been on TV all the time. Never met him or nothing. And that was the closest I really got to him. Until last year at the big event in New York, I'm at my table in my Hogan gimmick at the convention. Right across from me, not 6 feet aisle, across from me is Jimmy Hart, who was his best friend in real life, business partner in non-wrestling things. Yeah. Jimmy Hart was there with J.J. Dillon, who I knew. So I'm scared to death. God, Jimmy Hart, Hulk Hogan, me doing this Hogan gimmick for the last 30 years, what's he going to say? So when it slowed down at the end, I walked across the aisle. And I says, excuse me, Jimmy, could I have a picture with you? And, he's like a hamster on crack. He is always on, running all over the place. Sure, brother, come on. So he said, I got a picture. And of course, I thanked him. And I said, I really appreciate this. He says, with the gimmick and everything, he says, I didn't know if there's any heat or anything, knowing, your relationship. And he says, no, not at all, Randy. So let me tell you. He says, I talk to Terry about every day. He says, we've got other business ventures going on. And he said, now, you're not the topic of discussion, but he's aware of you and it's been discussed before. And the thing that we appreciate is I've never gotten in any trouble, any controversies with, drugs or booze or stupid stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I never did anything to discredit the Hogan name, even though I never said I was part of the Hogan clan.
Yeah.
He said, we noticed too, when Hogan went heel, NWO started that,
Mm-hmm.
I turned heel for a while. I was still doing all the independent shows and stuff, on top of TV.
Yeah.
So I turned heel. When he went back to the red and yellow, I went back to my turquoise. So I kind of followed his lead without ever saying anything.
Mm-hmm.
But anyways, but Jimmy said, he says, you keep doing what you're doing. He says, we're 100% behind you. He said, there's no heat, whatever, and that was it. So again, after being out of the business for 25 years or whatever, I finally got endorsed as Hogan, even though it was secondhand through Jimmy. That's close enough for me. So that happened. The only thing funny that happened recently is I had some, I didn't have them made, but a graphics guy made a picture, an 8x10, like a poster. It was a picture of me and Hulk Hogan. In the back says the American Bash, and the match that never was, the dream match that never was, Randy Hogan versus Hulk Hogan. I said, man, this is a great picture. So I put it on my website and started to sell it. So I get an email from Hogan's boy, Ron Howard, that manages his beat shops, a cease and desist.
Oh,
you can't
really?
do anything, nothing with Hogan's image or likeness.
Wow.
Can't sell it. So again, very apologetic. I sent it off, took the pictures, off of the website. But if anybody asks, I still got them. I just can't advertise them. In fact, I had some blown up in 11 by 14 poster size. They were just that good and that different. And like I said, it's like a split screen, like we're on right now. So I'm on one side, Hogan's on the other. And he's there flexing like that, and I'm standing there in my robe. The dream match that never was. What a great picture! But I got a cease and desist, so I had to quit selling them.
Wow, gosh.
So
crazy.
I'm sure that Hulk had something to do with that, and I think I know right where it came from. I know a guy that bought the picture, lives here. He took the picture in after I signed it and sent it to him. He took it into Hogan's shop to see if Hogan would sign it also. And he said, well, what's this? So all of a sudden, so I don't know what triggered it, whatever, but that was it.
Harsh.
That's my whole Hulk Hogan story right there. The Jimmy Hart, Hulk Hogan, Hogan's Beat Shop commercial right there.
That's cool, man. That's cool.
Wow.
Well,
so that's all the stories I got, man. I'm sorry I cut into all your time, but I get running on my mouth and I just can't stop sometimes.
You're cool, man. No, it's great. This has been absolutely awesome. It's been amazing. Thanks so much, Randy. We're nearly out of time, so there's only one way to finish this. If that match did happen, Randy Hogan versus Hulk Hogan, cut a promo on him now and tell Hulk Hogan what's going to happen.
What's he going to do when Randy Hogan drops the big elbow on him? What's he going to do? He don't know what he's going to do. Randy Hogan don't know what he's going to do. Jimmy Hart, the little weasel out there, don't know what he's going to do. But I'm going to have Big Jonathan in my corner, okay? And he's going to slip me a foreign object, and I'm going to go back to the NWLO days, and I'm going to pop him, and it's over. Woo.
Thanks so much, Randy. That was absolutely awesome. Thanks so much.
Jonathan, you, Pro Wrestling Defined, baby. You guys are great. Thank you so much. And I sure hope to get across the pond to see you guys in the next year. So I'm really working on it hard.
Definitely. We have to get you over here anyway sometime soon when everything opens back up. It's been a pleasure talking to you, Randy. Thanks so much.
Thank you. I appreciate it.